Hi, and welcome back to Crypt Finder. I'm continuing my series on made-for-TV films, classic gems that have kind of been forgotten over time, and I want you to gas up because we're going to hit the road here with Night Terror. Night Terror, and it's also known as Night Drive occasionally. It's a 1977 made-for-TV thriller starring Valerie Harper. The film is directed by E.W. Swackhamer and is a very suspenseful tale that revolves around a terrifying night in the life of a woman. She finds herself pursued by a relentless killer while driving through the desert. This story follows Carol Turner. She's played by Valerie Harper. She's a housewife in Phoenix, Arizona, and even from the outset, it is clear that she is frazzled. Her children are leaving on a plane with her sister to Colorado. She and her husband will be driving across the desert as they relocate due to her husband's job in Denver. A series of circumstances quickly set the story in high gear here. Carol's son, Buddy, is rushed to the hospital in Denver for surgery. Her husband is delayed due to business obligations, forcing him to delay his trip out to Denver, and Carol is suddenly thrust into a 16-hour trip across the desert to be with her son in the hospital. The drive starts out pretty uneventful, actually, but then things begin to take a darker turn because Carol witnesses a shocking event. While driving on a deserted highway, she sees a car parked on the side of the road, and as she passes by, she notices a man who brutally shoots a highway patrol officer in cold blood. The killer is able to cast a floodlight in her face, so she's unable to identify him, but Carol quickly floors it to try and get away. Realizing that Carol saw this murder being committed, the killer takes off after her, and what ensues is a cat and mouse game as Carol desperately tries to evade her pursuer while navigating the dark, desolate highways. This killer is relentless, and Carol's situation becomes increasingly dire as she struggles to stay one step ahead of him. The tension mounts as she encounters various obstacles, and some of them are sort of the typical tropes that you would see: running low on gas, tires getting stuck in the mud, trying to get help from other motorists, but then also just the eeriness of being alone on the highway in the middle of the night, surrounded by the desert with nowhere to go. Carol's fear and desperation intensify. The killer, on the other hand, is determined to silence the only witness to his crime, and Carol must confront her fears, find the courage to face her pursuer in a final nerve-wracking showdown. Night Terror is a classic example of the woman-in-peril subgenre of thrillers that were very popular in the 1970s. The film creates an atmosphere of relentless tension with the desert setting, amplifying the feeling of isolation and hopelessness. Valerie Harper's performance as Carol Turner is central to the film's impact, as she convincingly portrays a woman pushed to the edge by fear, but who ultimately finds the strength to survive and fight back. The film explores a lot of themes of survival and fear and the vulnerability of being alone in a hostile environment. Yes, it's a made-for-TV movie, but Night Terror has garnered a cult following over the years due to its effective suspense and Valerie Harper's strong performance. Of course, Valerie Harper was much more well-known for her comedic performances, such as Rhoda Morgenstern on The Mary Tyler Moore Show and its spin-off show, Rhoda, as well. And so this was a bit of a departure for her, but it really allowed you to see the range she had as an actor, because suddenly she's in the middle of a very taut thriller. She really shines in this role of a woman who's so absent-minded. She leaves her cup of coffee in the fridge in the beginning of the film. When she loses the itinerary, her husband produces another copy because, well, the entire family knows how sort of scatterbrained she can be. This sets up the audience then that, yep, there's no way that she's going to be able to handle what's finally coming her way, and yet the result is Carol becoming a much more resourceful target than the killer expects, as Carol repeatedly outwits him, making us just root for her all the more. Richard Romanus, who played the unnamed killer, had previously appeared in films like Mean Streets from 1973. He was often portraying characters that were very intense and intimidating characters. Here, the killer's backstory, it's a bit of a mystery. We do see extensive scarring along his chest and neck and dog tags indicating some past military experience that has now led him to become either a hired assassin or an arms dealer, maybe based on all the guns that he's carrying. He also uses an electrolarynx on his throat, but the filmmakers just kind of largely ignore that. It's not being used to try to make the character more menacing or anything like that. All it's really supposed to be identifying is that there was some sort of previous throat trauma that he experienced. And really, Richard Romanus, what this means for him is he has to emote a lot more. There's so much more he has to do with his body, all of his physicality, squinting eyes, his face, and the grunts that he's able to produce. The director of Night Terror, E.W. Swackhamer, was a prolific TV director who was really known for doing a lot of popular shows, including The $6 Million Man, Kojak, also Murder, She Wrote. He had a knack for directing suspenseful scenes, and that's certainly evident here in Night Terror. His ability to help build tension with limited resources turned out to be key. Before Night Terror, there was already a very rich tradition in cinema of dealing with exploring the themes of being hunted down by a killer on the open road. A lot of these earlier films really featured male protagonists, but certainly laid all of the groundwork for this sort of road terror subgenre that ultimately Night Terror would end up falling into a little bit later on. You had films like Detour from 1945, The Hitchhiker from 1953, The Night Holds Terror from 1955, and of course, Steven Spielberg's film Duel from 1971. However, at least to my knowledge, I think this is the first time that you had a lone woman stalked on the highways by a relentless killer. That would, of course, become much more popular later on. You would see that certainly in the Jamie Lee Curtis vehicle Road Games from 1981, and then also Joyride with Lily Sobieski, although Paul Walker, Stephen Zahn also feature pretty heavily in that film as well. That will do it, everybody, for Night Terror. There is an HD version of this movie out on YouTube right now for free, so you have absolutely no excuses. You can go and watch it anytime that you want to. Until next time, everybody, let's keep it just under the max speed limit, okay? Stay curious and stay scared.